My name's Alex. I'm 44 years old, and I live just outside Austin, Texas. Not the glitzy part. Not the tech startup playground with kombucha on tap and lawn signs every 10 feet. I live out where the roads stop pretending to be smooth, where the trees aren't ornamental, and where your name still means something if you've earned it the hard way. I run a furniture business, real furniture, not the particle board junk that falls apart after one angry move. Walnut, mesquite, red oak. Would that costs more than my first car? 12 years I've been doing it, commissions mostly. Dining tables meant to outlast marriages. Cabinets that'll hold silverware no one in my family's ever owned. Cribs for babies I'll never meet. It's all word of mouth. I never needed to advertise. When you build something that speaks for itself, it finds its way into the right homes. After my first marriage bled me dry and spit me out, I bought a small patch of land at the edge of nowhere. 1 acre. A crumbling barn and a house that barely stood upright. But it was mine. Not ours. Not rented. Not borrowed. Mine. I spent the better part of a year rebuilding that barn with my own 2 hands. I pulled out every rotten beam, replaced them with better ones. Dug a trench for drainage, poured the new concrete slab myself. Ran electrical. Rewired everything. Installed my own dust collection, laid in soundproofing. Every floorboard, every shelf, every clamp hung just so. I did that. I didn't hire out. I didn't ask for help. I worked through the Texas heat until my skin blistered and my spine ached, and then I worked some more. Not because I needed the punishment, but because I needed to know that when it was done, there wasn't a single piece of that place I couldn't claim with full authority. The shop became my sanctuary. More than that, it was proof. Proof that even after failure, you could build something that wouldn't betray you. Tools don't lie. Wood doesn't cheat. You get out exactly what you put in. Then came Jenna. I met her at a local craft fair. She sold candles. Soy-based, hand-poured, labeled with clever names like Midnight Patchouli and Witching Hour. I didn't think much of it at first. She was soft-spoken, polite, had this way of listening that made you feel heard. That alone was rare enough. We started talking. One thing led to another. Dinner. Then weekends. Then months. She moved in after a year. Brought with her 2 kids from a previous marriage, Shane and Layla. Shane was 21 at the time. Layla was 15 and quiet. Barely looked up from her phone. They were fine at first. Awkward but manageable. Jenna did most of the parenting, which suited me. I stayed in my lane. Paid the bills. Kept the lights on. Stocked the fridge. Jenna took care of the rest. We got married a year after she moved in. Nothing fancy. Courthouse ceremony. Her parents didn't come. Mine were long gone. I didn't mind. I figured we were adults, no need for spectacle. Just 2 people trying again. But over time, things started to shift. It was slow, subtle. Little things. Jenna would say our land when talking to her friends. Our shop when giving someone a tour. First, I let it slide. I figured she was trying to feel included, trying to nest. I told myself not to make a big deal out of it. But inside, a voice started whispering. That's not hers. She didn't lay that foundation. She didn't tear out those walls. She didn't live off ramen for 2 years to afford that planer. She didn't sweat, bleed, or break her back to build it. You did. Still, I said nothing. And silence is a dangerous thing, because silence over time becomes permission. It was late spring when I had to make a delivery out in Amarillo. A custom conference table, 48 hours door to door. When I left, the shop was clean, organized, prepped for my next build. When I came back, it felt like I'd walked into a squat house. There was a mattress laid out where I usually clamp slabs. Posters taped to the plywood walls, Hendrix, Kerouac, some psychedelic nonsense. Socks on the floor. Dishes stacked by the sink I used to clean brushes. A laptop plugged into my outlet, streaming garbage through tinny speakers. And Shane, sitting on my damn workbench, scrolling his phone like it was just another Tuesday. He looked up and nodded at me, like I was the intruder. Hey, he said, cool if I crash here for a while? I didn't answer him. I just stood there, the weight of it all pressing into my chest like a clamp I couldn't loosen. I walked through the shop in silence, past my jointer, past my lumber stack, past the shelf where I kept client orders sorted. His duffel bag was on top of a finished chair, like it was a damn suitcase rack. I walked back out to the main house. Jenna was in the kitchen making tea. She smiled, like she was proud of herself. I didn't want to text you while you were driving. Shane's just staying in the shop for a bit, only until he gets back on his feet. I looked at her, and something behind my ribs shifted. Not anger, not yet, just a slow, deep pull, like something inside me had been quietly moving for years, and now it was finally making itself known. "This is my workspace," I said, calm, controlled, like a man trying not to scream in a library. She didn't flinch. "He'll be out of your way. He knows to stay out of the way when you're working. That's not the point. He just needs space. And we both know it's not like you use every square foot of that place. He'll stay out of your hair." I took a breath. Tried again. "It's not about space. It's about respect. That shop isn't a guest room. It's not a crash pad. It's my livelihood. It's the only thing I've got that no one can take from me." And that's when she looked at me, really looked at me, and said the sentence that would reroute the rest of my life. "You're not the boss here. This was a family decision. You're just part of the family." No anger, no edge, just flat, matter of fact, like it was already settled. I stared at her, at the kettle whistling behind her, at the cabinet I built for her, now painted some soft shade of green she picked out, at the photos on the fridge, Layla's birthday, our wedding, Shane grinning at some barbecue I paid for. And I realized I wasn't standing in my house anymore. I was standing in someone else's idea of what ours meant. That night, I walked back into the shop and sat on the workbench Shane had turned into a mattress platform. He was out, probably at some bar, some friend's place, some girlfriend's couch. I sat there for hours, staring at the grain of the walnut slab I had prepped for my next project. And the whole time, that sentence echoed in my head. "You're just part of the family, not the father, not the man who built this place. Just part, a piece, disposable." I didn't break anything, didn't yell, didn't take the posters down or dump his mattress on the lawn. I just sat in that silence and let it speak, because that's the thing no one tells you about men like me. We don't explode. We erase. I didn't yell. I didn't slam doors. I didn't go storming into the house with a speech about respect or property rights or personal space. That would have given them the dignity of a conflict. Would have let them feel like this was some debate, like there were two sides here. There weren't. That night, after Jenna went to bed and the house fell quiet, I sat at the kitchen table alone. A single overhead light, cup of black coffee, and my laptop. I clicked open a folder I hadn't touched in over a year. Labeled it Property Offers. Inside were PDFs and emails from land developers, some local, some out of state. They'd been circling for a while. A new freeway was going up nearby, and the zoning laws were changing. Everyone wanted a piece of the area before the prices spiked. 6 months ago, I told them no. Told them I had no intention of selling. That this land wasn't just real estate, it was mine. They didn't understand that kind of logic. To them, everything has a price. Everything's for sale. That night, so did I. I replied to the most aggressive buyer, a firm based out of Dallas. Offered me high 6 figures last winter. Told them I was ready to talk. They responded within the hour. Sent over a formal offer with expedited closing. A blank space for my signature. I stared at it for a long time. I wasn't angry. That's the truth. I wasn't shaking. I wasn't bitter. What I felt was colder than that, hollow, still, like I'd finally stopped arguing with gravity. I signed it. Didn't ask Jenna. Didn't even tell her. 2 days later, a notary came to the shop. We stood outside by the fence line. Shane's laundry flapping on a makeshift clothesline like flags marking territory, and I initialed every page while Finn, my black lab, sniffed the man's briefcase. He chuckled. I didn't. The closing date was set for the following Monday. I had less than a week to pack up my equipment and clear the shop. I didn't wait. I called a friend who owned a moving service, asked for a crew. rented a storage unit and started hauling every tool, every clamp, every blade I ever owned into boxes. Each one labeled in Sharpie. Not for them. For me. Shane watched from the corner a couple times, earbuds in, arms crossed, never offering to help. Not once. Moving stuff around? He asked once, like it was casual. Something like that, I replied. He shrugged and went back to his phone. The night before the sale, I stayed up late, packed the last of my scrap wood, swept the concrete one final time. There was a moment, just a flicker, where I paused, where I stood in the middle of that empty shop and thought about all the mornings I'd spent in there before the sun rose. The smell of fresh sawdust, the sound of a jointer warming up. The first time I turned the lights on after rewiring the place and thought, this is mine. That moment passed. I left the keys on the nail near the door. That Saturday, Jenna went to brunch with the kids. Some overpriced cafe downtown, the kind with chalkboard menus and drinks served in mason jars. They didn't know what was coming. They laughed and ordered pancakes while the world beneath their feet shifted. I left the certified letter on the kitchen counter, folded neatly in an envelope, addressed to Jenna. Title transfer confirmation. Sale finalized. 24-hour notice to vacate the premises. I'd paid extra to have it notarized in advance. No wiggle room. By the time they pulled back into the driveway, the movers were already there. White truck, clipboard in hand, matching shirts. I sat in my truck down the road, parked at a diner, ordered black coffee and eggs I didn't eat. Just waited. My phone lit up at 9:15 a.m. Alex, what's going on? There are men here, with paperwork. What the hell is this? Answer your phone. You can't just, what did you do? I didn't answer, just stared out the window, steam rising from the coffee. The next voicemail is one I still have saved. Shane's voice, panicked, furious. You don't get to do this, man. You don't get to kick us out like this. This isn't just your land anymore. You married Mom. That makes this ours. You can't just sell it out from under us. We have rights. The mover's voice cuts in, calm and even. This property was sold under Alex's name. You have 24 hours to remove all personal belongings. Then Jenna. Her voice wasn't calm. Not anymore. I cannot believe you did this. We had a life here. This was our home. You blindsided us like we were squatters. You blindsided me. You didn't even talk to me first. She was wrong. I had been talking, just not with words. That afternoon, I returned to the property for one final visit. The moving truck was gone. Jenna's car was loaded with bags. Shane was sitting on the front steps, red-faced, jaw clenched like a child who'd been sent home from school. Layla stood near the mailbox, arms folded, looking at me like I was the villain in some after-school special. Jenna was arguing with someone on the phone, probably her sister, probably spinning a version where I was the monster. But what caught my eye, what made me stop the truck and get out was Finn. They had him on a leash, my dog, sitting in the back seat of Jenna's car like cargo. I walked over and opened the door. Jenna turned around. Alex. I held up my hand, said one word. No. She hesitated, looked like she wanted to argue, then dropped the leash, stepped back. Finn jumped out and ran to me, tail wagging. I clipped his real leash on, the one I always used, and walked him back to the truck. Not a word passed between us. She got in the car. The door slammed, and they drove away. That night, Finn slept curled up beside my work boots in a one-bedroom apartment I'd rented off the river. Smaller place, better light, quiet neighbors. The shop there was half the size but mine. Untouched, clean. For the first time in years, I didn't feel like I was apologizing just by breathing. And for the first time, I wasn't pretending this was anyone's dream but mine. 3 weeks passed. Enough time for the dust to settle. Enough time for the texts to stop, for the missed calls to slow down. Jenna had tried everything, long voicemails, short ones. Apologies dressed as explanations. Accusations wrapped in self-pity. At one point she even tried nostalgia. Photos from better days back when we were still playing house. I didn't respond. Not out of cruelty but clarity. A man only has so much weight to carry before his knees stop bending and start breaking. The apartment near the river suited me. Tall windows, quieter nights. No teenagers slamming doors. No echo of other people's entitlement ringing in the hallways. I set up the shop in the garage bay, poured new concrete, bolted down the bandsaw, rewired the outlets to handle my load. It wasn't big, but it was mine. Again. For the second time and the last. Then one afternoon she showed up. No warning. Just the sound of gravel under tires. I looked up from sanding a walnut shelf and saw her standing outside the open garage. Hair pinned back, sunglasses perched on her head like she forgot whether it was a shield or an accessory. I didn't speak first. She did. "I didn't think you'd actually go through with it," she said. Her voice was flat, tired. Not angry, not anymore. Just weathered. I looked at her, let the moment breathe. Then I asked her one thing. "If I hadn't sold it, would you have stopped him?" She didn't answer. Just looked down at her shoes like maybe they had something honest to say. That told me everything. She left a few minutes later. No tears. No argument. Just a pause. A long, slow breath between two people who finally saw each other for what they were. And then she was gone. That silence could have been the end. It wasn't. A month later, I got invited to a family barbecue, her side of the family. One of the cousins still liked me. Said they'd love to see Finn. I almost didn't go. But I brought him anyway. Figured a couple hours wouldn't kill me. Let the dog get some sun. Let the silence speak in a new zip code. That's when Shane showed up. He was drunk. Not falling down, bottle in hand drunk. Just loose. Mouthy. Wearing a shirt that looked like it had been washed in excuses. He stood too close when he talked. Laughed too loud. Took up more space than the air had room for. It didn't take long. One beer turned into three. Three turned into a speech. He stood by the grill, waving his drink like a sword. "You know what's wrong with this world?" he slurred. "People think they can buy control. Think they can own everything. Land, love, loyalty, like it's all just property. Capitalist poison." Everyone laughed, half out of habit. I didn't. He locked eyes with me then. Pointed. "You think money makes you a man? You think selling land makes you powerful?" Jenna's father, old school, no patience, finally snapped. "Why don't you just get a damn job like everyone else?" That shut him up. For the first time, Shane didn't have a comeback. He stormed off. Left his beer on the grill. Didn't say goodbye. No one asked him to come back. I thought that was the end of it. But then Layla opened her mouth. She was 17 now. Smarter than Shane. Sharper. She didn't yell. She just knew where to cut. I had just set a drink down on the patio table when she walked by, phone in hand, not even looking at me. Her voice was casual, like she was commenting on the weather. "Mom handles the real stuff. You're just here." 3 words. That's all it took. Just here. Not respected. Not included. Not remembered for what I'd given or what I'd carried. Just here. That night, I went home and opened another folder on my laptop. Not property this time. Not land. Not tools or lumber or contracts. This one was digital. Personal. It was every line I'd added over the past 4 years. Every favor. Every handout. Every responsibility I'd taken that wasn't mine but became mine by default. I called the insurance provider and removed all 3 of them from the car policy. Jenna. Shane. Layla. Effective immediately. Then I logged into the family phone plan. Removed every line but mine. Let the system auto-cancel their accounts. Next was streaming Netflix, Hulu, Spotify, Prime, all of it. Gone. Then the cards. I had given Jenna a debit tied to a sub-account years ago. One that quietly paid for grocery gaps, gas, emergencies. I canceled it. Transferred the balance to a locked personal fund. By morning, their digital umbilical cord was gone. But I wasn't finished. I took a cardboard box, 18 by 12 by 12, and placed it on the old bench I'd salvaged from the first shop. I labeled it with a black Sharpie. Return to sender. Then I started filling it. Layla's old hoodie that ended up in my laundry. Shane's forgotten Bluetooth speaker. A pair of Jenna's earrings left on my nightstand. Grocery store receipts with their names on them. A drawing Layla had made 4 years ago that said, "My almost dad." Even that, I packed them all with care. No venom, no ceremony, just precision. I left the box by the door of their apartment the next night. Taped the lid closed. Didn't ring the bell. Just walked away. A week passed. No one called. I think that scared them more than anything I could have said. When people like that realize the faucet's off, they don't panic. Not at first. They wait, expecting it to drip again. But silence is louder than water. It echoes. Then one evening, Jenna called. Her number still worked. Prepaid now, I guessed. "You made your point," she said. "Can we at least talk?" I paused. Let the weight settle. "About what?" She sighed. "About everything." "I've already paid for everything," I said. "Now you get to." Then I hung up. That night, as I sanded down a reclaimed maple slab, Finn sleeping at my feet, I realized something. They never hated me for what I did. They hated me for what I stopped doing. The moment the benefits dried up, the illusions went with them. That's the part they never understood. I was never trying to be their father. I was trying to be fair. But fairness has a price, and I stopped paying it. I don't know what Shane's doing now. Last I heard, he was couch hopping, applying for jobs he thinks are beneath him. Layla's still with Jenna, senior year, tight budget. I imagine the Amazon packages don't show up like they used to. The car doesn't get gas without a conversation now. Jenna? She sends short emails sometimes. Logistics, mostly. Wants to know where I moved the lawnmower, if I kept a copy of Layla's dentist records, if I'm willing to talk. I don't reply. I don't need to be cruel. I just need to be gone. And I am. I didn't leave out of spite. I didn't vanish to punish them. I didn't walk away in rage. I left because I finally understood what I was in that house. A placeholder with a wallet. A warm body behind the bills. An accessory to a family I didn't shape, couldn't steer, and was never really invited into. Not fully. Not honestly. They never said it outright. Not until the end. But it was always there, humming beneath the surface. "You're not my real dad. You're just part of the family. You're just here." 3 variations of the same message. We'll take what you give, but don't ask for anything back. Not respect. Not authority. Not a seat at the table. Your job is to provide and disappear. I believed. God help me, I believed that maybe if I just kept showing up, if I paid enough, fixed enough, gave enough, they'd look at me and finally see a father. But you can't buy belonging. You can only rent it. And I stopped paying the rent. After I dropped off the box and cut off the accounts and sold the land they thought they could squat on forever, the silence that followed was pure. Still, like standing in a church long after everyone else has gone home. That silence said more than Jenna ever did. It told me she'd always known the imbalance. She just never corrected it. Not once. Every time the kids ignored me, mocked me, defied me, she watched. Sometimes she winced. But she never stepped in. Never realigned the scales. Never looked them in the eye and said, "This man is your parent too." Because in her heart, I wasn't. I was the help, the buffer, the man who saved her from having to face their real father's absence, who picked up the slack and never asked her to thank me for it. That was my role. I filled it well, until I didn't. I remember a night, 2 years into the marriage, when Shane crashed his car. Not totaled, but wrecked enough to need repairs. Jenna was crying on the phone, saying we didn't have the money to fix it, and I remember telling her, "I'll handle it." I drained my savings, skipped the new table saw I'd been saving for, put off a doctor's visit I needed, just so he could have his ride back before the weekend. I handed him the keys. He said nothing, just took them and left. I told myself he was just a kid, that he didn't know how to say thank you yet. But he wasn't a kid. He was a man in training, and I trained him to believe I was a resource, not a person. That's on me. You get what you allow. When Jenna called again, weeks later, it wasn't even to apologize. It was logistics again. Something about a tax form or a warranty card or Shane's medical records. She didn't ask how I was. Didn't mention Finn. didn't acknowledge anything I had done or undone. It was like she was speaking to a contractor who used to work in the house and had moved on to another job. And maybe that's exactly what I was. Temporary, useful, replaceable. But what they all forgot was this. I didn't come into that family asking for favors. I came in ready to serve. And they mistook that service for weakness. They mistook my silence for compliance, my generosity for guilt, my endurance for emptiness. But I was never empty. I was building something, not a life with them, not in the end. I was building a line, a final line. You step over it, you lose me. And they did. A few months after everything unraveled, I got a letter in the mail, handwritten, sloppy, crumpled, no return address, but I knew who it was from. Layla, the girl who said I was just here. The letter was short, 3 paragraphs, no apology, just context. She wrote about how things had changed since I left, how the bills came late now, how the fridge wasn't always full, how Jenna had started working weekends again, how Shane had moved out, then back in, then out again, how their real dad still didn't show up. She didn't say she missed me, didn't say she was wrong. She just wrote this. You didn't say much, but I guess you didn't have to. We just thought you'd always be there. She thought I was permanent, a fixture, a given, like light switches and running water. She thought wrong. I never wrote back, not out of cruelty, just because I'd said everything already. In every payment, in every mile driven, in every quiet sacrifice they never noticed. That was my letter, sealed with silence, mailed by action. And as for Jenna, the last time I saw her was at the grocery store. She was alone, pushing a cart with coupons tucked into the front flap. I was in line behind her at checkout. We both saw each other. We both paused. Then she smiled, the kind of smile that begs for peace without earning it. She said, "Hey." I nodded. Nothing more. We stood there in silence while the scanner beeped between us. When she walked out, she left a receipt behind. I picked it up, watched the item scroll. Cereal, detergent, canned soup, off-brand coffee. That's when it hit me. They were finally living within their means. Their real ones. Not the ones I inflated with my labor. Not the comfort I silently underwrote. Theirs. I walked out and drove home. Finn met me at the door like always. Tail wagging, tongue out, no agenda. We sat out back that night, just the two of us. Sky cracked open with stars. Cold air licking at my skin. I sipped bourbon and watched the dark roll in. The shop was quiet. Orders were coming in again. Word of mouth still traveled, even when family didn't. I had reclaimed my rhythm. Early mornings, honest sweat, finished projects that didn't argue. Wood at least knows what it owes you. You cut it straight, it stays straight. You respect it, it holds. You treat it like it matters, it lasts. People? Not so much. Now, sometimes when I think back, when I replay the last year in slow motion, I still ask myself, was I too harsh? Should I have warned them? Given more chances? Had one last talk with Shane? One more sit down with Layla? Should I have fought harder to be seen? But then I remember how they looked at me, how easily they dismissed everything I built. Not just the house, not just the shop, me. They saw a man who gave without limits. And they chose to test the limit anyway. So I don't regret the silence. I don't regret the exit. What I regret, if anything, is that I ever thought it could be different. That I mistook access for belonging. So here I am, years later, still building, still quiet, and still asking you, was I wrong? Was I cold to finally step away? Or was I just the first person in that house to stop pretending? You tell me, would you have endured it? Or would you have left too? Not with fire, not with fury, but with one quiet word and the key to a life finally free?